He's Blake. I'm Ronnie. All the good names are taken podcast. And here we are. It's bowl month. It's bowl season. It's bowl time. Are you ready for this?
Ronnie, when I was a kid, I had a bowl cut.
I did too. Bowl cuts, and they will be back in eventually.
They'll be back.
You got to think they'll be back. Right now,
it all comes back.
The Soup Bowl cut is back now. I saw that the other day. Where have you been? I've been having to do riffing videos with Sleazy and Tim and Boz over.
Yeah, I mean, y'all been doing a good job. I've really enjoyed those. But I've had to do I did the Christmas gimmick and I did the New Year's gimmick, and I'm back now.
And speaking of gimmicks, I sent out a graphic about what, Blake, 3-4 weeks ago, whenever we put this out. It said ATGNAT bowl season or some shit like that. I can't remember exactly what I put. But anyway, here's the concept we came up with. 4 reviews in October, which is usually around when bowl season ends. So we're going to be talking 4.
Does it end in October, Ronnie?
What'd I say? I say October or January?
You said October. Cut, redo.
Cut that.
You had a bowl cut, Ronnie?
Yeah. It's coming back around. But anyway, here's the gimmick we were talking about. We would do four movies this month of January involving football, because bowl season's going on in January, and then you got the Super Bowl in February. So it's all football centric, Blake. So here we go. First on the list, Necessary Roughness.
Yeah, and just like every other movie we reviewed, this is a nostalgia thing for me. You made me watch this as a kid. Classic underdog story. I love this movie. I mean, if you're talking about the top football movies of all time, Necessary Roughness is going to be in my top. It's going to be in my top 5.
It's not the best drama football movie you'll ever watch. It's not the best comedy football movie you'll ever watch, but it's a really good movie, like Blake said, because of the nostalgic factor. We had a copy of Necessary Roughness that I don't know if I bought it from somewhere or what, but we had a VHS copy that we watched until the VCR broke. And it's the movie we've always watched. And I own it again, I think, on VHS somewhere over there. We're going to good, bad, and ugly this bad boy. I got first question I want to talk about. Scott Bakula. Me, you, and Tim have had great text conversations about Scott Bakula and whether or not he's C-list, D-list, where does he rank? And it's like he was a good actor, but not good looking enough to make it big. Here's my question. Here's what I've been thinking about. And here's what I've been worrying my wife about. In 1991, when this movie was released, which means this movie was probably filmed in 1990, what person could have been a believable 34-year-old former quarterback that would have made this movie better? The first one that came to mind for me is, like always, Swayze. Swayze being the guy on the farm that has to come there. I know he weighs 125 pounds in real life, but Scott Bakula can't weigh more than 145 in this movie. I thought Swayze could have played a 34-year-old man coming back to college. I don't know if he could have done – well, what am I talking about? Of course he could have done better than Scott Bakula, but I couldn't come up with any more actors that would believably have been in this movie.
I can give you 2. Let me throw out Dennis Quaid.
Oh, yes. Dennis Quaid would have been great in this movie. You're right. He plays Cap Rooney later on in Any Given Sunday.
Yeah, Dennis, and I think I don't know his age, but I think around 91 it would have been the right time for him to be in his mid-30s.
He definitely, I'm going right now to find Dennis Quaid. He definitely would have been the right age. So, and I mean, all you got to do is look older. 1954, which means he would have been 36 years old. So he could have pulled it off. And plus, he's got that youthful look to him. Dennis Quaid is way better than Patrick Swayze because Dennis Quaid's got that athletic build to him.
And I'm going to say this name, and the more I think about it, it's not good. But I'm going to say Kevin Costner.
Yeah, that's what my wife said. Kevin Costner could have done it, but I think he would have been too big at the point to do a movie like this. Let's get right into it, Blake. For anybody that hasn't seen Necessary Roughness, first off, what's your problem? It's really based around SMU from the mid 80s. SMU got caught multiple years, like 3 years in a row, cheating. So they put them on what was called the death penalty, where they couldn't have football for a whole year. And then they'd come back that second year and they could only have away games. So SMU decided not to have a football season that year. And then when they came back that third year, they could only choose football players from the student body. Needless to say, it killed the entire program. And I don't think they had another winning season until like 2009, 2010. So this is what this movie's based off of, a fictional, which there is a Texas State University now. But this is based off of a fictional Texas State University who had been dominating the college football landscape, got caught cheating, got the national title taken away from them, and the whole program had been wiped out. And if they wanted to keep playing football, they had to pick students from actual class. There could not be any scholarships given. The concept of that in a comedy movie is fantastic for me, Blake. I mean, I love that. And that's some of the best parts of the movie. I think the cast is really good. I think the story was good. What's your first good, Blake?
My first good is going to be the score by Bill Conti. Yeah, I mean, just from start to finish, I think it's a masterpiece when it comes to that. I mean, in the beginning, the intro music, the training montage music, the sad music when things aren't going his way, and then at the end, the triumphant the what?
Triumphant.
The triumphant music is wait a minute. Triumphant.
You got it.
Yeah. The triumphant music. I can't say that.
Good.
Bill Conti is the first good. Good music. Music good.
Going back to what I was talking about, my first good is the idea. A school on death row, having to choose from the student body. Fred Thompson is over this school in some way. I don't know if he's the president or what exactly he is. He goes to ESPN where Hector Alonso, Coach Ed Gennaro, is doing a story on it. And Coach Gennaro is like a legendary coach that threw 4 All-Americans off his team and still won the Cotton Bowl. So he brings him in to run a clean program. No pressure to win is what he tells them. We just want you to run a clean program. Don't embarrass us. So you've got Gennaro, and then you've got Robert Loggia, who's probably my favorite character in this movie, Wally Riggendorf, the defensive coordinator. And just the concept of these two guys coming in, knowing they're going to have to pick from actual students, watching the tryouts they have for these students. I have no idea why they are in the gym doing these football warm-ups and or tryouts. Why are they not in the stadium, Blake? That it never makes sense to me. You got Popke throwing a pass inside a basketball gym instead of in the middle of the stadium. I don't understand how that happens. And then they get a team chosen only for Larry Miller, who is the dickhead dean, to come in there and tell them, hey, the grades of these kids, they can't play. So they decided to play Ironman football. For anybody who doesn't know about football, Ironman football is where you have everybody playing both sides of the ball. When they come out for the first game and you hear Rob Schneider go, they're traveling with 124 players or something like that for the team they're playing. And then he goes, here comes all 17 of your fighting armadillos. Just the idea of a D1 school having to play Ironman football, not only having to play Ironman football, but playing Ironman football with kids from the classes is fascinating for me. And that's one of the things I love about this movie.
Characters, the different characters that we're introduced to. Because like you said, none of these people were going to play football. I mean, football was not part of their plan while at college. So you got a martial arts guy. You got a guy who's obsessed with being in the army. You got the big Samoan. You got Kathy Ireland, who is total smoke. You got Jason Bateman, who's even hotter than she is. You got
hottest thing in the movie.
You got Sinbad. You got, like you mentioned, Larry Miller being the heel in the movie, which I don't think is really needed.
And it's very comical the way he does it. It's not like you never really fear what he's going to do because he plays it such
I'm on a diet,
a goofy way,
and busy. Yeah, and I mean the lady professor who had a crush on Paul Blake when she was in high school. I mean, we're just introduced. I think they do a really good job of introducing us to a shitload of characters really quick
and developing, for the most part, some of them. Like, see that's my
Jason Bateman. I mean, you find out he is spoiled and grew up in a completely rich, loaded family. I mean, he says, Edison, You mean like the guy who invented the light bulb? And, Robert Loggia or the other guy says, no, bigger. Edison Library, Edison Avenue, Edison Stadium. So, I mean, his parents donate a lot to this school. I mean, and then you find out about the coaches. You talked about Gennaro. Let's talk about Wally. We don't really get to know a lot about Wally, but there's something in the beginning when they're first getting started. He goes, Ed, thanks. Seriously.
Yeah.
No shit. Thanks. So it makes you wonder if he has been falling on hard times and couldn't get a job. And I wish we'd have got a little more backstory to that. These characters are fantastic.
These two coaches are great, and I really wanted more time with them. Hector Alonso, I'm gonna call him Ed Gennaro. Ed Gennaro feels slighted because he was kicked out by boosters after trying to run a clean program. He's working for ESPN, which brought back a lot of nostalgia for me, seeing that ESPN set with that dark lighting and Chris Berman before they ruined it by having heads on there all the time. And I had it in my notes, Blake, which you were talking about Wally. When he takes the job and they're both walking and Wally's giving him a hard time, he goes, I had a chance to have my own team. He goes, coaching high school football in London, Wally. And he goes, yeah, I only had to teach one personal hygiene class. And they get into that locker room and Robert Loggia looks at Ed Gennaro and he's like, thanks. No shit. Thanks. Because wherever he had been, he had dropped from the D1 college level all the way to the high school level, which happens all the time. But these are definitely two characters, two coaches that are looking for, it sounds cliche, but one last run to try to solidify, their greatness or try to reach whatever goal they had as coaches. Very good characters.
Well, you find out at one time he was at Penn State because he originally tried to recruit Scott Bakula, Paul Blake, to Penn State, which I'm always fascinated in these movies, especially these early movies, what schools they're allowed to mention and what schools they're not. Wouldn't you think SMU would have been like, yeah, you could use our school in this movie? I mean, why not?
You also got to look at it like you don't know what the budget of this movie was. How much would SMU have charged them to use their likeness? It's better to come up with a fictional. That way you don't have to get everything approved by SMU. Just mentioning Penn State, you definitely don't have to pay them anything, I wouldn't think. If you want to look at it from a different perspective, it's North Texas. I mean, they're in North Texas facilities. They're using North Texas's uniform scheme. Pretty much they're North Texas. You're absolutely right with that. Wally mentioning that he was recruiting for Penn State back in the 70s. So these guys have a lot of history of coaching, probably a lot of good ball, and are probably way too damn old to be getting back into it, which makes it pretty funny. But my second one, Blake, is Paul Blake. Scott Bakula. At the very beginning of it, he's doing the Uncle Rico. He's out in the field throwing the football back and forth. But it's really cool because the first thing you see is like a puff of smoke in the distance, and you hear a tractor, so you think the smoke is from the tractor, and it's not. It's from him having that Marlboro hanging out of his mouth, which is awesome. He's a country guy, even though Scott Bakula doesn't do the country voice as good as some other people would. It's not completely
Kevin Bacon.
Nick Cage terrible.
Would Kevin Bacon have done this? Ignore the whole he was too big at the time. Could Kevin Bacon have done this?
Yeah, I don't know if Kevin Bacon is a believable high school or a believable
quarterback. You couldn't use a hammer in the trimmers.
He damn trimmers. It took him 50 whacks to get a nail in. But Paul Blake is great. He is definitely still living in the past. You find out, Gennaro asks, what's the deal with him, Wally? Because we haven't even brought up that they field an entire team. And then they realize they don't have a quarterback. So Wally, who's been told to butt out of the offense, goes and looks up Paul Blake and says, look, you still got 4 years of eligibility left. And Paul Blake laughs at him and goes, you're throwing a bunch of damn kids to the wolves. And he goes, why don't you just stay here with your high school trophies and wonder how good you could have been? And
he knew what buttons to push.
Yeah, he's registered for college the very next day. Paul Blake's out in the field, and he is just from like 40 yards away, just dinging this thing. This dummy he has set up on springs, and the velocity from this football that's knocking this dummy back and forth over and over. with an 88 jersey. I would have liked to seen more out of him, but when you've got like a comedy movie like this, I can understand why we didn't get, well, we probably got just enough, but I wanted more into, you sort of get a glimpse of it when he's banging the teacher or the professor, and he's like leaned on the side of the bed, and she's like, what's going on? He goes, I never lost in high school. Never knew what it felt like. He goes, I just want these guys to experience winning one game, to get that feeling. Along the way, I mean, him and Gennaro, like the first game is great because first and second down, they get smoked. And then he decides to call audible on third down and throws it deep. And then he bring up the fact that you got the big guy from the program who plays, I think his name's Dwayne Davis, maybe. He plays the receiver Stonehands in this movie, and he hits him in stride and he drops the ball. But he gets benched. He's just really good in this movie. I mean, they make the old people jokes all throughout the movie, but he's believable as somebody that would have come back out and been able to do this. I mean, he doesn't look out of place, I guess is what I mean by that. And I guess you wouldn't on a team that you got from the student body.
Bunch of scrubs, yeah. And that's my next good is the what if story of Paul Blake. Some of my favorite movies of all time are sports movies that have the what if scenario. This is a good example. The Natural with Robert Redford is a good example. Tin Cup, Kevin Costner is a good example. It's what could have been if what happened to him in the movie didn't happen to him. I mean, you got to think Paul Blake would be finishing up his career in the NFL right now as a 34, 35-year-old. Just a legend. The Natural, he would have been in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He'd have broke every record. You wouldn't have even known Babe Ruth, And then Tin Cup, obviously, if he could just keep his head together, he would be the greatest golfer of all time. It's the what if. I mean, if he did decide to go to college and play, I mean, how many Super Bowls does this guy win, depending on the situation he's thrown into? Because he comes back as a 34 or 35-year-old, and he doesn't miss a beat. I mean, he is. And let me ask you this, Ronnie. I know 20 years ago, the Panthers took a chance on like a 29-year-old Chris Winkie, 30-year-old Chris Winkie. Does any NFL teams take a shot on Paul Blake?
Absolutely.
I know nowadays they do, but in 91, do they?
It would have been tough to convince them, but I think somebody would have taken a chance. Absolutely. The only problem with that is he would have had to done 3 years of college, so he'd been 37 coming out of there. Then the answer would be no. He wouldn't.
How does Suzanne not recognize Paul Blake?
She probably hasn't thought about him in 17 years.
She don't know who he is till she calls roll.
She remembers
if you're obsessed with somebody.
It was back in the day before they could cyber stalk you.
That's
you don't know
good point. Good point.
You don't know what he grew up to look like. I mean, hell.
He probably got rid of his bowl cut.
My last good is the bar fight scene. We're introduced to the Texas Colts and Flat Top, the linebacker, one of the other. So, spoiler alert, they lose all their games, guys. And there is a part in the season where they go to blow off some steam because the team is about to kill each other. And they're getting drunk. And here come the Texas Colts in. And the dude with the flat top calls them all a bunch of pussies that haven't won a game all year and shoves Jason Bateman down. And then Paul Blake, who said he wasn't coming, is there. He pours a beer on Paul Blake and then says something about Manu Manu. And Paul gives him a 1-2 combo to the face, and he shrugs it off like it's nothing. And if you listen in the background, you hear somebody go, "Oh, Lord." Sarge goes in for a punch, misses. As he misses, he looks back up at Flat Top, who just knocks his ass out. He gets thrown through a plate glass window, through those lights that hang over the pool table, onto the pool table. Samurai's kicking the shit out of people. Popke's throwing punches. Everything's great. And then at the end, the dean is there really quickly because he's trying to catch these guys the whole movie. But that whole scene is really, really great. I like the whole ridiculous concept of all of it. Them just getting the shit beat out of them by the Texas Colts.
Yeah, if you pay attention, you'll notice a core group of guys that's almost in every football movie. I mean, you got Wyatt, who is Latimer in the program. He's also Leatherface. He was very disrespectful to the original Leatherface. You got Stone Hands, who's also the middle linebacker in the program, and you know him. You John Carpenter fans, you know him as the guy from Ghost of Mars who tells Natasha, "I'll cut you effing off."
There you go.
The bartender from the bar at the bar fight. He's in every football movie. He's like a trainer. You know, he helps. I know he's usually a coach. I think he's in Replacements. He's in every one of those. 17 kids. You know, and like you said, they lose every game. They tie Kansas after they go and recruit. So Paul Blake goes and recruits Sinbad, who is a
professor apparently
astronomy,
for retarded astronomy. Because he's teaching some
like
shit.
Basket Weaver, go to bed. They got some retarded Australian kid too. I'm looking at him right now. But
no pads for me, coach. Then he gets his ass knocked out on the first play.
I don't know, Ed. Pats could ruin his game. So Paul goes and recruits Sinbad, who turns out he played against him in high school. He still has a year of eligibility left. They get a little bit better. Then they go and recruit Kathy Ireland, who is a soccer player. And that's when they tie. They get their first tie. This is back when games could end in a tie. They tie Kansas 3-3. Yeah, 3-3 because Paul Blake fumbled. Paul Blake's look. He's wearing the light blue jean jacket. He's got the Canadian tuxedo. Yes. Denim on denim, jeans, jean jacket with the white tee,
smoking a cigarette. I mean,
he would have been mowing down these hoes at Texas State.
My first bad, Blake. I'm going with the dean, Larry Miller.
It's weird. It's weird because you don't mind. It's not needed, but you don't mind it, right? Is that kind of where you're going? I mean,
yeah. I like Larry Miller.
Yeah,
you didn't need this much of him. A dean that hates football, but goes to all the football games and watches all the football practices. A dean that's openly trying to ruin the program. The whole thing about Larry Miller, and he does have a couple of comedic scenes. The best scene is when he gets run over there at the end. Hello, boys.
Like you and me in the first place. Hi, boys.
But
how you doing, boys?
There's a couple of scenes like when the penitentiary guys come. He schedules a game between them and the local penitentiary.
I was just about to mention them.
And they're getting they don't even get the damn first snap off. And he's like laughing at the fence in just a goofy comedic way.
So on that bus, we got Dick Buckus, we got Earl Campbell, we got Roger Craig, we got Ben Davidson, computer fraud. We got Tony Dorsett, Evander Holyfield, Ed Too Tall Jones, Jim Kelly. All right, Dillos, let's get it on. Yeah. We got Jerry Rice, Herschel Walker, Randy White. And it looks like it's it.
No, they don't even get a damn playoff. They go to it already starts to cadence, and one son of a bitch goes crazy and clotheslines them. They all getting their ass beat.
Please take the ball. We're such huge fans.
The whole point of me saying Larry Miller is a bad is because if he was like the supreme rule maker in that school, I get it. But Fred Thompson fires him at the end of it. So it really don't make a lot of sense, especially since earlier in the movie, he tells Gennaro, look, I can't run blocker for you right here. The dean has full say. Well, apparently not.
By the way, you're fired.
I agree with you. That's why it's one of my bads too. It's like, if this guy's a problem and he's in our way, why are you waiting till after the season to fire him? I mean, get rid of his ass before. I mean, by the way, you're fired. But I guess you got to have that because how do you, I mean, you're not going to win him over. He's a loser. He's a nerd. Nerds don't like sports. They never will because they're losers. So how do you win him over in the end? You got to have somebody above him fire him. So I get that, but I just think they kind of backed themselves into a corner with that. And then you got the whole side plot of him trying to hook up with Paul Blake's professor, teacher. I mean, that was kind of silly.
Yeah. So he's never getting laid.
I wish he was more realistic. I wish he was screwing a student.
I almost put Rob Schneider down as one of my bads, but he's tolerable. I mean, he's doing his best Harry Doyle impression from Major League, and he gets his Saturday Night Live skit in there.
Could that have been Dana Carvey?
It probably would have been better as Dana. Anything's better with Dana Carvey. My last bad, Charlie Banks. When they're doing the tryouts, Blake, Gennaro makes a point of saying, look at that guy right there. There's no quit in him. Charlie Banks was the only person that was still able to play football after they gave him the death penalty. He did nothing wrong. Gennaro even says they left him off the main roster whenever he was on the team. Charlie Banks should have had a bigger role in this movie. And the reason I say this is they are tied with the Texas Colts at the end of the game. Gennaro has a fake heart attack. I can relate. and Wally takes over, which leads to Wally putting a suit on, and it also leads to one of the best halftime speeches you're ever going to hear because they're down like 20-0 or something like that. And he says, what we have to do is assess the situation. And he goes, what is working for us? And he goes into, it ain't not working for us. If you want to be a good football player, you play football like Ed Gennaro played football. He was a 130-pound halfback, and he played like a wild man, a rampaging beast. One of the best scenes of any football movie. Edit for all of that. But one of the best scenes of any football movie. And as this movie's going along, or as this game's going along, I should say, Ed Gennaro finds out he's just got indigestion. So he shows back up on the sideline. Meanwhile, Featherstone has learned how to catch all of a sudden. They score on like a fake punt. And then he's like,
running wide open.
He's so horrible. They don't even cover him. He's like, come on, Paul.
They see the game film. I'm wide open.
He's running.
Don't throw it to Stoneheads.
He catches a touchdown pass, and now he can catch. And later, towards the end of the game, he throws it to him, and he almost takes it to the house.
He almost wins the damn game. He throws like a little 5-yard out, and he's gone.
At the end, they tied up with a trick play. And
let me talk about that for a second. Earlier in the movie, Gennaro makes a point to say, I'll coach the offense while you coach the defense. No interference. And Wally says, oh, yeah, you're the big O. I'm the little D. But I love it that at the end of this movie, they rely on each other to win the game. Wally calls the game-winning play. Gennaro calls the game-changing play on defense to get him the ball back. So that's something I never realized as a kid until I rewatched it a couple of days ago, that, you know, you can tell there's just a bond there with those two.
Paul Blake takes a beating in this game from Flat Top, whatever his number was. And on this trick play, he's scrambling around. Charlie Banks gets dumped on his head. He gets up, and Charlie Banks is standing in the end zone, and he gets the flashback, which will give you chills if you're a decent human being, of the dummy in his cornfield wearing number 88, and he hits Charlie right between the numbers with it. Now, Charlie catches the pass that wins him the game. Earlier in the movie, when Paul Blake first shows up, Wally says, tattoo somebody, and Charlie goes running out there for a route, and Blake hits him in the chest, and he leaves his feet. He threw it so hard. So the reason I bring all this up is they should have made a bigger effort to sprinkle Charlie into more scenes. The Charlie character should have been more involved throughout this movie. It's almost like you've forgotten about Charlie at the end of the movie whenever he catches the ball.
You know, and that's a good point, Ronnie. Does it feel like Charlie should have been the Justin Bateman character? Because, you know, him and Blake kind of bond a little bit. Jason Bateman, I mean.
Charlie should have been if anything, Jason Bateman.
Throw it to Jason Bateman. Yeah.
Jason Bateman should have been the Charlie character.
Right. The legs of a chicken, the only guy who survived the team from last year.
Yep, because he was on the team because of his dad having money.
Right. Let him catch the game-winning pass. I mean, you're right. We don't get no other scenes. I mean, Charlie, he just, you know, threw up Chew into a helmet. I'm watching that right now. But, you know, we get that scene with Jason Bateman and Paul Blake riding around in the Jeep. He's like, I'm quitting school. You know, he's like, you can't quit, kid. He's like, you did. He's like, how'd I wind up with Jiminy Cricket?
Mm-hmm.
They go back. Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely fumbled the ball, so to speak, with the Charlie character. The Charlie character should have been a bigger character in the movie. And you're right. Jason Bateman should have been the Charlie character. That would have made it. That would have made it so much better.
Yeah, the bads, I'm going to stick with just the Larry Miller. I usually get upset in football movies of how they win the game sometimes. I think it's kind of unrealistic, you know. But this one, I really like. I really like it. I wish we'd have got some more defensive stuff during that game, because it doesn't explain why the number one team in the world can't drive the ball. These guys, you know.
Well, no, I thought about that. It just means Wally's one hell of a defensive coordinator.
He's he's coaching his ass off. I mean,
he's put them in the right positions because they hold Kansas to 3 points. They hold a bunch of these teams. You look at the score to decent, you know, figures defensive wise. I mean, he holds the number one team in the country to 20 points. It's awesome.
I mean, what other movie where you only win one game is like a success story, and that's what this is. Like everybody is super excited at the end. Gennaro has cemented his legacy, beat the number one team with a bunch of nobodies. Not just nobodies, but nobody's playing both ways. There is one thing I don't like, Ronnie. This is a college. Where the assistant coaches. I mean, I know
Yeah.
you're not supposed to ask questions like that. It's like in Varsity Blues when they run John Voight's ass out of town and the players coach the second half, even though a high school that size would have 25 coaches on staff. When Paul Blake throws the ball in the very first game and he's not supposed to, you see the coaches up in the booth say, damn. And I just saw like 4 coaches on the sidelines. And I know that's nitpicky stuff, but I don't know, little stuff like that. I wish you had made a point of saying, hey, we don't have position coaches. It's just me and Wally.
We don't have the money to hire.
I'm the head coach and the offensive coordinator, and this is the defensive coordinator, and that's it.
Yeah, I agree on that too. I noticed that.
It's nitpicky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like with anything. All right, Blake, time for the ugly.
Okay, so I had 2 guys in mind. I was going to say the guy who's barking playing linebacker in the first game. Hey, high school.
Wesley the Doberman.
I was going to say Sinbad.
He's ugly.
Because he is ugly. They named him Sinbad, Ronnie. He had 2 choices, comedian or pirate. But as I'm sitting here watching this live, in Sinbad's class, there is a redheaded 4-eyed bitch that is completely ugly. And I got to go with her.
Do you think Manu the Slender killed Flat Top when he hits him there to keep him from hitting Paul Blake at the end of the movie? Because he knocks his face mask off. And
he's never going to touch you.
And you see nothing but blood.
Okay, Garcia.
You see nothing but blood pour out of his mouth. So
yeah, I like to think he's dead.
He's laying over there dead. Also, there was a great scene where Big Manu gets a sack and then he's doing the dance with another guy.
Flat Top could be one of the uglies.
Well, yeah, he's Flat Top definitely has a hair lip. That's probably why he's so mean. Gets all the food trapped in the top of his mouth. My ugly is Wyatt Beaudry. Andrew Bernatsky, whatever his name is, Leatherface, Latimer. He's ugly. He's jacked up in this movie, though. He's ugly. He was ugly to Gunnar Hansen about the Leatherface stuff when he passed away. He's definitely ugly, and that's probably why he's so angry, Blake. So that's my ugly. Definitely ugly. You are one ugly mother. That about do it, Blake. You got anything else?
That's 10 out of 10.
Nostalgic purposes is 10 out of 10. As a kid, I always wanted to see what happened that next season. Would they be able to recruit anybody? Part of me believes, after watching this movie now as a 50-year-old man, this was it. This was the one season that these guys were going to get, and then it was going to go back to, hey, we can recruit again after 1 year of the death penalty. So, I mean, I don't know if that's what they intended to happen in the future or not, but it's kind of sad. And like you said, in a movie where the team only wins one game, it's still a really good movie. And that one game was well worth the wait at the end of the season. The only thing I didn't like, and I guess you have to, or otherwise it'd be a 3-hour movie, I wanted some more footage from the games. Like they wipe out like 6 or 7 of the games.
Yeah, a little montage.
Yeah, doing the newspaper thing. But
newspaper in like one play. Newspaper in one play. Twins running into each other.
That's Necessary Roughness, guys. 1991. Hit us in the comments. What are your good, bad, and ugly from Necessary Roughness, especially the ugly? That's it. Like, subscribe, all that other stuff. Blake, you got anything else?
Hey, Ronnie, tattoo somebody.
All right.